Okay, hello everyone, Mark Sajan again, and today we will discuss how to create a VFX background with a minimal camera movement and give this single picture the sense of depth. So how to build it up in 3D, especially 3dsMax. Alright, so this is our base image, and we want to cut it up and organize elements into layers, and we will project these textures onto 3D models. And once the camera is moving, these 3D models will give us the parallax effect and some sense of depth. And also you will be able to use depth of field or something else like that. Alright, so here's the system of the breakdown. So you don't need to create as many layers as you see here. This is just a rough idea. So we have something in the foreground, that's the main mountain, and there is something in front. It adds a lot to the movement, and if you have time or interested, you can create further details, but usually it's a 1-2 part main object is a good idea to start with. And we have this left side, right side drop with some mountains in the distance. This is a good reference image. Basically that's what we're going for. And yeah, we have a sky, and this reference is a help to organize things in 3D. So before you're jumping in, my advice is to go through this and make your selections and other things. On this left side, you will be able to see that what kind of images we need. We need color images that will cover the part of the actual rock. So this one, for example, is this part. This is front C, and it has a mask that's black and white. Now this area may be black, but if there's something something is wrong around the cuts, these similar colors to the rock can help to hide them away, right? So if something is not perfect with the cutout during texturing, this helps a lot. You won't see a black edge around. Alright, so now go to Photoshop and just let me quickly guide you through this. See it for yourself. So basically what we do is with the lasso tool, a polygonal lasso tool, and right, it's just slowing down. Yep, so this is polygonal lasso, and if you press Shift L, it will cycle through the different lasso tools. Shift is a good thing to be used in Photoshop. And now I just roughly create this cutout. It takes much more time, but let me just depict the idea of how to make it. So this will be my main, and when I'm closing this, double click and it will close. I can press Ctrl J, and that will create a new layer. So now we have a new layer. If you want to save it as it is a full mountain and you don't want to create any more thing, then you're good. You can actually create a new solid color layer that may be a little bit of a dark thing. So this may be saved as your color layer, and then you can save a version with a black background and with a white over it. So that means black no, white means yes, it's visible. So to quickly, once you have it cut out, you don't want to cut it up again, so hold down Control, click it on the thumbnail, and it will load your selection. And once your selection is loaded, you can go in solid color and pick a solid color like a white, and there you go. This is your mask, and that's not a save. The logic is going the following way. So this is just with one layer, but what happens if you have furthermore split ups? So for example, if I want to split this front, let me quickly make this layer active and just start my selection. So that may run somewhere here. Okay, just roughly, again, just giving you the idea on how to work it. And Ctrl J again. I'm not removing anything, so I don't want to cut this, just copy it. Now what you see here is, if I highlight it, we have a range below. So when we start moving this in 3D, you will recognize instantly that, okay, if these layers are moving, we will see what is under, what's behind this layer. So you have to create a new layer usually. That's for repair. So what does it mean? Let me switch to simply a stamp tool. Alt right click and drag. And if I'm dragging up and down, it's going with the hardness. Left to right is going to the side. Okay, so that's how it goes. And holding Alt key will sample. And I will just quickly create this sample. Okay, it's it's not really, it's a pretty dirty way to do it. You can paint it, you can spend quite a lot of time and make it perfectly, but usually it's, there's just a small movement, you don't need to go crazy detailed about this. So why do we care? Because when we start moving this layer, so let me just quickly, so when we start moving this layer in 3D, then it won't repeat the exact same pattern, so we are not get busted. All right, you see here I was sloppy, so even if I'm moving it, it's just replicating itself. All right, so this is why we are using this little repair layer. So technically that is the idea behind this. So you have a main layer, then you can cut it into further pieces, and when you have a smaller piece, please make sure that behind that smaller piece there is some repair that hides away at least the edges around your previous layer. All right, so that's the logic. And yes, we have a sky, so if I turn back on, we have to select the sky, and that's a little bit different. So let me quickly just make this rough. If you have a sky like this, you can actually cheat a bit. So let me select this layer, Ctrl J, and turn everything off. So this is the layer we have. We can actually sample a part. So I switch to rectangular marquee, and Ctrl J to copy, and Ctrl T, Ctrl D to deselect, Ctrl T to transform. Oh, sorry, something was off. Ctrl J. Right now, okay, Ctrl T, and I can stretch it out, and yeah, something like that. And yes, we can blend, so we can apply a mask, and then just going with black and white. So let me go with a simple brush, B brush. Alt right click. Okay. Yeah, that works fine. Alright, so that's what caused. Alright, excuse me for the mess. And X to switch between colors. So if you want to paint back something, you can always use X to switch between black and white. And now opacity is 31. You can reduce it a little bit lower, but after some time you will get a fairly even sky backdrop as well. Okay, now let me go back to 3dsMax and see what's going on. Alright, so first of all, to customize, we need units, and this is a large scene, so metric units, meters, system unit meters, okay, and we are good. And the main layer, the main image we're looking for is the reference image, so maximize all W front viewport, and create a plane that's, actually the image that I've used is 16 by 9, so that means it's a standard HD type of ratio, so we don't want to change the world with this. So the width will be 1600, and that will be 900. Right? It's just a rough estimate, but it's good to go. Simple V to set it to move, and right click to 0 the values, so now everything is in dead center. What else? First, right away, open up Material Editor, and let us, if you see the different the slate editor, you can, in the modes, you can switch to compact material editor. Let me drag and drop it and rename it to reference. And basically it should be a matte material with a roughness that's 0.6. It's not perfectly matte. We can set it higher, 0.8. And that helps a bit to reduce the shine. Some shininesses could be okay even for stones, so that may be good, but not all case. Alright, of course the color, we don't care about the color right now, just open up a bitmap and load here our bitmap reference, and hit enter, and see, there you go, bitmap reference layers. I will use this because it helps to distribute the things. Alright, so there we are. Now we have some cheat sheet to work with. Let me close this and switch to perspective. Now something goes off. My goal here, and let me explain this, it helps in the process. So Alt W, we have 4 viewports. So what I did when I was activating this one, let me maximize this. When I'm pressing P, it will switch to this perspective viewport, okay? But if I'm here in the 4 viewport layout, activating front and zooming in and set this image somewhat in the center, and I'm pressing P now, that's a whole different thing, because that previously dedicated to front view, that is converted now into perspective, and it maintains the view angle, okay? And then I'm pressing Ctrl C to assign a camera to the viewport, so that's a physical camera. And now I'm pressing F front to go back. I don't want to keep that, and from now on I will use mostly the 3D camera viewport and the perspective viewport. So typically this is how it goes. So we can set a camera here or set a camera here. Function key 3, Shift F, that's save frame, and then we can just resize it to, just to have some room to work around. Okay, so before we are going on, let us check that the camera is exactly the same ratio-wise. So here we are, and the common parameters, it's a single shot, HDTV, and that is actually good. We can go higher resolution, but right now, just for speed purposes, for testing, maybe 800, 900 should be enough. All right, so we won't render that much at the beginning, mostly in the viewport. Right, let me close this. So this one is good. What else? I want to make sure that this image is perfectly aligned to the camera. Now the camera it has its own geometry as well. So once you have the camera, we can actually align, and here's the align. We have two main type of lines. More than that, we can align camera and many things, but here there's align and there's quick align. We're using the very simple align. That's Alt A, the hotkey, or you can click in here, and I'm selecting the model and clicking on the camera, and I will snap it to the camera. That's pretty cool. But what else we'll do is we want to make sure that the all axis is matching. All right, you not necessarily have to do this, but if you made the camera creation process perfectly. But if not, it could be a help. Or if you have a random camera in the 3D viewport and you have to use it, that may be a good point. And all the axis and pivot points are matching. So now on, I want to get it back. Now it's not just moving around. We need to move it in normal mode, local mode. Sorry. You can set here local mode and reference coordinate system, change it to local, or you can alt right click and go to local, and that's the quick way. And now I can drag it and move it until in my reference window it covers the stuff. Okay, so see it's okay, it's a great match. Now this technique is really useful if you have a concept art and you have to build something according to your concept art. All right, so it's not just about this VFX stuff. All right, let me move forward. So now we have this image, and perfectly fine, but I will make a copy of it. But before I make a copy, reference 001, before I make a copy, just rename it. And this will be partially covered, and sometimes it's easier if you have it on the side as well, because that won't be covered. So the first thing is right away, it's creating the sky. So what I will do is having this model, and shift and drag and make a copy, and that will be sky. All right, so at this stage, our main goal is to very quickly build something that we can test our camera. All right, so just to get a grip on this whole thing. Now this material is set, so we have a few things. I like to copy this. It's the easiest way. You don't have to adjust any values. It's just simply copy and rename it to sky, and just go into the material and just click it on this long button, and we can load the bitmap. So you don't have to find bitmap again. It's just replacing the existing one, and we have mountain sky. I saved it as mountain sky, and this is the selected model. This is the button for assign material to selection, and now it's visible there, and there we are. Okay, to add some 3D effect, we can actually bend this a little bit with a bend modifier. Hit enter, start bending along which one? Yeah, x-axis, but it's negative. Okay, we don't need that much, just a slight bend. And to make it a little bit smoother, these segments are fairly low, so let me switch plane mode and increase the segments in this direction. and maybe in this direction as well. Okay, the reason I'm increasing that on horizontally and vertically both, because I want to apply in the modifier list, I want to apply an FFT 3x3, and maybe with the control points I can drag this, or drag actually these 9, select rectangular marquee and function 4, and actually drag these points. And now it's not a perfectly spherical thing, but it is closer to sphere. All right, you don't have to use a sphere. In my opinion, in many cases it's a little bit more flexible, so you have somewhat more control. But you can use a sphere as well and select a part and just assign a map on this. Okay, so that's what we see. And okay, let me drag this, move it a little bit behind, and test and see if we are busted or not. Okay, there we go. So no edges visible. And if I'm clicking away here, there is some edge. So what I will do is just pull it a little bit further, a little bit closer. Okay, now it's fine. All right, so that is it. So, okay, what's next? Just to develop the scene, I will create the main layer. Okay, so we have a backdrop, we have a main layer, and actually I don't think we need the bend anymore. And maybe the FFT 3x3 should be reset, so I will just reset it to make sure. And this will be the main. Now, where is it? Open up the material editor and the good old trick, so drag and drop and rename it to main, and going to the bitmap and just replacing the existing bitmap. It's much faster than just opening and doing other things. So we're looking for main color, and assign it to our selection, and there we go, we are good to go. Okay, I'm not sure the mapping, however, is perfect for this. It may be because we have used exactly the same sized plane, and this is a full size image. Let me show this. So this one itself is actually an HD resolution image, and the plane as a physical model, it's an HD ratio model, so we don't have to worry about mapping that much, but still it's worth to apply a UV mapping. So even if it's barely visible, I want to show you the technique. So there is the map. So to make sure that the map is perfectly fit, we can choose bitmap fit and load the actual bitmap we're looking for, so main color, and that will perfectly match it. Now there's no change because it's already perfectly matching. And we can switch to camera mode, and there's another button I can show, and that is view align. Okay, so view align can be a great help. Now as you see, this mountain is bigger than expected. Just a second and I will explain what's going on here. So yeah, we need a cutout map. Here we are, cutout. There's no map yet. That's a bitmap again. And walking down, hit enter and look for the main mask. So when it's there, when it's presented, now it's loaded and it's instantly make it work. If you don't see it, there is this show shaded material viewport, so you can turn this on and off. Now the cutout map is shown. If I'm going to the sibling, that will be the base color map. And if I'm pressing it, it will show the color. If I'm going up in parent, it shows the root of the material, and when I'm hitting this show shaded, it will show the combination of these two. So okay, let me go back to perspective and make a change. So let me first, I can shrink it down. That's one thing I can do until it fits to the scene. So we want to have a distance. The more distance, yeah, let me go this way and push this even further. So because it's really in the distance, right? So we want to make sure that we have some room between the sky and the mountain because there's so many layers. But as I'm going with the distance, we have to increase the scale to fit this, all right? Good. Okay. So now I don't think this one is needed anymore. We won't use it that much here. We can use the reference, however. Okay, so let me hit delete that one. And what else? Now before we start moving and start thinking of stuff, what else we can do? It's not in 3D. So what else? We can go down the FFT and in a control points section, switch to move, function key 4 to turn off these wires, we can actually drag these and just move them a little bit. Okay, just move them, right? So add some 3D space to it. Maybe the bottom is a little bit even further. Okay, so if we wish, we can lift this up a little bit higher, but as you see, it's not changing the mapping, it's just changing the geometry. Okay, the mapping, because we have a UV map that projects from the camera angle, it will always remain fairly good. Alright, so that's the angle. Okay, even here. Alright, so that looks nice. Now, what else? Before we go into details, how to create an illusion of somewhat detailed surface, or how to fake it, we can actually build up another layer. So let me make a copy, and that will be layer A, maybe front A. That's the biggest part of the layers of this front area. So let me drag and drop. By the way, it's a good idea to know that we have way more material samples. So you can drag these sliders back and forth. So if you have multiple layers, don't be shy, but it's a little bit easier if you see less of these, because it speeds up the rendering process of within the material editor. So that will be front and A. Now let me show this the naming convention here. So let me explain this. So main front A is up front. A is always covering B, and B is always covering C, and D is covered by everything, but it could be B2, for example, in this case. Alright, so A is covering B, B is covering C, C is covering D, and that's how it goes. You can use any type of name, it's just easier to remember that this is the structure of it. Okay, so here we are, front A. Let me replace the color, main color will be replaced to front A color, and we are going to the sibling, that means next in a row, and that is the main mask. That was the mask. I will switch it to front A mask and assign it to the existing selection. So assign it to the existing selection, and yes, it is huge. So what do we need? Let me close this first and just move it and scale it. So scale it down until it fits relatively easy. Okay, that's how it goes. So we have some kind of a distance. Now, okay, so in a camera it looks pretty fine. Now it's time to make some tests. Alright, what type of tests? We can make some animation with the camera. But let me see that top and down. It's working fine. It's working fine. Great. Okay, so there we go. We have some gap in here, and go to select camera or press C and turn on auto key. But before we do that, we don't need 100 frames. So I will go into time configuration. This is a button. Time configuration, set the whole time to 60. That means 2 seconds. In 3dsMax, the default is 30 frames per second. So let me press OK. And now we have the time slider running from 0 to 60. And I'm pressing N, auto key. This is the button for auto key. And we want to animate our camera. So I'm not sure, before I do that, let me go back to perspective and see where we're going. Okay, the distance. So our main focus is this mountain itself. So right now, the camera target is behind this. So when I start moving my camera, it will be a little bit shifted. It will be a little bit off. So what I want to do is, let me turn off auto key and adjust the target before. So I don't want to animate this value. I just want to set it a little bit closer to the mountain. It's also good if we are creating depth of field. Yeah, it's just not as accurate. Alright, and now pressing C again, pressing N again, and I will drag my time slider going to the right, very right corner, and go to orbit, and orbit a little bit over the camera, and going up a bit, and maybe a little bit in. Okay, so that's what I do, and from 0, okay, this is what happens. So let me play this. This button is actually the from the backspace. If you have it on a keyboard, the backspace right on top of the enter, you have 2 keys left to it, and it's the second from the backspace, but it's depending on the keyboard, Right, I'm using a really weird keyboard. Okay, so that's how it goes. Right. Okay, so this could be a nice little, a nice little movement there. Okay, we're looking into this mountain. Right, great. Now what we have to take care of, the sky. Let me turn off animation. And now I want to move this sky a little bit. Function key 4. Okay, we need to select the sky. Let me open the layer. We have the sky and function key 4, and I want to move the sky a bit to fit better to this camera angle. Let me go to the 0 position. Okay, so it's not the best. What we can do is just increase the size a little bit more and see if it is enough or not. Yeah, it is. It is. So we have a horizon there, and that's moving. So we're moving into this. Okay, great. Now, what else? What about this mountain? So my problem is that the side of this mountain, this side, is a little bit in a bigger distance than here. So because of that, we don't really feel the turn. So what I will do is, in the control points, select these points, switch to move, and move them closer to the original mountain. So move them closer because I think originally it is closer. So originally it is closer. Okay. Maybe this should be, yeah, so now I need to lower the whole thing because definitely that is covering. So we want to cover that a little bit better. Okay, so let me see that. It's camera view, 0, and moving. And as you see here, this one is not as matching. We still see an edge on this side, so I'm looking for these minuscule errors. Okay, a little bit lower. Right, so if it's not enough, we can scale it up. Sorry, in all directions. So scale it up a little bit, change the cover. But I really do like now the effect. Okay, can you see this was the reason why we had to paint this. Use the tools, the stamp tool. Okay, I like it pretty much. Now what else? So before we are going on with the different layers, let me go perspective and share something with you. Now we can go further. We can actually sculpt on these, but before we do that, it's not a necessity, so you don't have to do it. What you can do is you can apply a turbo smooth, and the turbo smooth under the UVW map. So UVW map is always on top because that's our crucial point. So UVW map is always on top, and turbo smooth, what it does, it divides your model even further. So maybe 2. Okay, when we have geometry that's a little bit more detailed, we can apply displace. Now displace is, if you know what displacement does, displace does the same thing, but really on a mesh level in the viewport. It's kind of an old school displacement, so it's not really done during the rendering. It's done before that as an modifier. So it gives you a better feedback on what actually happens. Okay, displacement is great, but you can't see it in the viewport. But this one is actually performing that, and we have a better sense. Now bitmap is loaded, and we want to open up the very same bitmap, and that's for the mountain main color. Open, and yes, you can paint a black and white image. This is really a rough and dirty thing, but it may work. Just check it. Okay, so now I'm increasing the strength. Can you see how the strength pops? Okay, I don't need to be super aggressive. Now this is a little bit noisy. That's coming from almost every image. To get rid of the noise, we can increase a little bit of the blur. And once there's some proper blur, it can help you a lot. Now be careful, because when its strength is increased, this pushes the whole model a little bit up front. So it's a good idea to set this luminance center. And what it does, it tries to keep it in place. Okay, I don't want to be too aggressive. This is just just to get a better shadow, for example, a nicer, cleaner shadows on this. And if turbo smooth is not enough, you can increase it anytime. I will choose iterations 2, and to somewhat simplify the stuff, I can later turn them off in the viewports. But before we do that, let me switch to camera, function key 3, function key 4, and hit Shift Q and create a quick render and see what it does, what is our current situation. So we have a backdrop, everything is visible, it's totally dark, so we definitely have to use a light source. Now, if you have a concept art and hit cancel, no, sorry, excuse me. So you definitely have to take care of the lights. Now, this one is an existing image, so the light is there. We have to, conform to the existing lighting. Okay, so in the light sources, we can use photometric sun position or type of light, top viewport, Z zoom in, and drag it out and lift this up, rotation and lift this up, make sure it's going pretty high. There we go. Now, everything is lit up. It's just annoying to see that much light in the background. To quickly get rid of it, you can press Alt-B and go to use customize user interface gradient colors or user interface solid color. It's up to you. I will use the interface gradient and apply to all. All right, so this one, everything should be affected. Hit OK. That's good. And now we have a light source. And okay, we'll take a look. But let me see camera and hit Shift Q. But before I do that, let me go to rendering and see the render frame window. This was the previous, and let me hit render again and see what it does. Okay, looking nice. The problem is there, because of the sky bend, it generates some shadows that may be a little bit off. So we have to deal with the light angle. And as you see, this little rock here generates a shadow on this rock surface. That suggests me that the sky, the sun position is fairly low, so it's like an afternoon, or it should be somewhat like an afternoon, or not really so not high noon like we have. And because of this high noon, this generates that little shadow coming from this fin of the backdrop. But let me select the sun, go to modify panel, and here you have date and time. And I will set it to about 17. Okay, that should be much better, but as you know, sun goes in circle, so we can go to rotate mode and just cheat with the compass. Okay, so the sun should come from here, and that may help. Camera, Shift Q, and see what it does, and hopefully that shadow is gone. Now the only thing we have to take care of is the overall darkness. So let me hit cancel and just go open up environment panel number 8, or rendering and environment, and we have now by default, when you're using this sun positioner, it will automatically create a background, and it will automatically switch to your exposure control physical camera, and that's great. Now let me hit render preview, because when we have a preview, it will automatically update as we're going. We can't change the exposure value in general, so let me set it to 14, and it will be brighter, maybe, 13.5. Daylight, that should be fine, and maybe the highlights should be a little bit higher, so 0.4. Yeah, it's a little bit brighter, and let me hit and make a comparison view. So this was the previous one. Copy it, and go hit render and see what it does. Okay, it's much brighter, maybe too bright. We can adjust it anytime. I think 14 will be better. All right, so this looks a little bit overly bright. So let me hit cancel and set this to 14. Okay, there we go. Now, so that was the first layer. Now we have a light setup. Now we have the basic structure. So if we're maximizing this viewport, actually it could be it's just a matter of time how you deal with this. So there we go. This is the model, and yes, we can use the turbo smooth. So the same technique, turbo, hit, and that's set to be 2. That's fair enough, because it's a little bit smaller plane, and we don't need to worry about this that much. And displays, and there you go, displays, and we have this model and bitmap, and that is the color. So desktop and mountain environment, and this is I will go with the list details, and this is front A color and luminance center, and set this, and I will use existing mapping. That's a good idea to turn this on. I haven't turned this on the previous one because there was no issue with the match, but I will turn this on here and increase it even more. So maybe 20. Okay, I can see now it has some really strong things, and maybe in the UV I will just scale it up. Yeah, scale it up to make sure that this is there was an edge. Okay, let me show this. Can you see that edge around? So if you experience something that may be a little bit of an issue later on, so if you want to get rid of it, even if it's not visible in the render, you know, it's better play safe. So I'm using the gizmo. That's if you press number 1, it will automatically switch to the first subobject level, whatever it is. So we'll scale it up a little bit, and there we are. There's not a problem anymore. Okay, so we have now a 3D look of here. You can see this is a little bit distorted. Still, there is no, in the displays, there's no blurs. So I will use some blur, and that's it. So that's definitely, we see a smoother snow and a more rocky surface, and we see these ridges popping a little bit more. Okay, this looks great, and if you wish, you can actually use as displacement with the materials as well. Okay, so what's next? This was the first thing, but we can go with the left A, for example. Just quickly create a left A view, and I will set this and I'll rename it to left A, just with the first panels. So there we are. Open up Material Editor and see this thing. So drag and drop, copy. That will be left A, and material should be left A. So left A color, and there you go. That's for left A color. Here we are. It's fairly dark, and assign this. We have a different cutout. Which one? You know, it's odd. So everything is different a little bit. So let me go to the sibling and change that as well. So that instead of the front A mask, we are using now the left A mask. Hit this. Boom, there we go. And in the display section, we are fitting that and change this to left A color. So there we are. Alright, so let me see that. What it does, actually, it's not much. It's just fairly, it's maybe the blurs is too high for this because there's so many just tiny things going on. Okay, so we don't have to worry that much with that. Alright, so it's a good idea to have. Go to the camera and see where we are. Okay, it's definitely not what we're looking for. So we want to go in and use the scale, and we will use the reference as well. So where it should be, Alt W, and I'm looking for this. This will be a simple front, Shift F, and on this view, G is to hide away geometry. I'm looking for this and looking for the proportions. So camera, function key 4, and see where it does. It's really smaller, and one way to solve it is to put it behind, and that will be camera, Shift F. So put it behind and move it down a little bit more behind. Okay, move it in a distance, and I will use now a scale. I think this distance is fair enough. And okay, now dragging it, I'm not perfectly following what's going on here, but it's really close. Actually, it's, if you wish, you can make it much more articulate. So let me drag this and see if it works or not. So from 0, this is how it looks, and at the end, yeah. Okay, so can you see how these are changing? Right, it's great. Now this mountain is pretty much a little bit stretched out in the space. Okay, so this little depth, what you see here, that should be a couple 100 meters at least. So to get that sense, we can actually go to the FFT and stretch this bottom part of it. Stretch this a little bit more. Okay, so go in there and stretch it. Right, now that's great. So once we have this, we can go hold down Shift key and drag and make a copy, and that will be left B. So left B will be a little bit more interesting, a little bit brighter. And right away, I'm just scaling this up a bit and move it up in position. And yeah, so I'm curious now what will tell us. So open up into your editor, and again, left A, that would be left B. And just quickly go in on materials and change left B and see what it does. So left B color, hit OK, and go to the sibling. And this is quite repetitive from now on, but let me make a couple points and then we can check up with the summary. Alright, so left B mask should be used. Okay, and assign this material to our existing and go to the camera and check how does it look in the camera. And as I see, according to my reference, so here's this ridge, and that's where it should land. Okay, undo to get back to my selection, and probably should end here. Maybe this one should be a little bit lowered even further. Okay, that's just to give a view, and let me drag my time slider and see how it goes. Okay, it's nice. I think actually I can create more depth in here. I can drag this a little bit more behind. The further you get to the camera, the movement will be a little bit more intense. Okay, so it will give you the illusion, oh right, it's a much bigger terrain. So let me drag it to the side and see what it does. Okay, we're still not busted. Yeah, it's pretty good. So if I'm clicking away, I'm watching this little window and dragging and see what it does. Okay, it's good. I sense the depth. Let me show this in a little bit bigger. So drag, and now we have this two little mountain things are going well. Okay, so this is going pretty well. Okay, right. Now there's this other in the background. This is a huge part, so it will be really important. So that will be the next thing, and then we can move on to further details, and then I will do the wrap up with a complete model. Okay, so let me go Alt W, perspective, and look for the final. And where's the final? So Shift drag, and that will be left C. That's the big one, and definitely should be bigger. So scale, that's a must. And open up the editor. And now we are out of slots. So what I will do is just go one step left and drag it. Let me go up, left B, and that will be left C. So left C, how does it go? And assign it. We haven't changed the material yet, but we will the texture yet. So that will be just C, left C color, and go to the sibling. Looks good. Go to the sibling to change the cutout. That's the mask. Left C mask. Hit on. Yeah, it's looking good. Okay. This is actually a little bit off. All right. So let me see. Alt Q. Isolate. How does it look? And I think we should go to camera and exit isolation mode and scale this puppy a little bit up higher. Okay. So this is a huge mountain here. It's not, you can see this should be covered. So that was the original edge of the mountain. And there's an overpaint here, but that could be a little bit more accurate. Now, something that's on the selection. So if you have selection issues, please you can use these layers, the manager to select things. This is why it's a really powerful thing to rename the stuff you have and move. And let me drag my time slider and see what it does. Okay, it looks nice. Function key 3 and Shift Q, just quickly have an idea. How does it look? Okay, we are generating some shadows. Something is coming from the sun. We'll check that. All right, but it is fairly good. Okay, so let me hit cancel. and see what's going here. Perspective, and there we go. So this model, oops, sorry, perspective, where we are, which one? Okay, this one is selected. Go to the camera and function key 4 to see it, and there we are. This model, actually, this is left B. This one shows some details that we don't want to see. Left A, I'm curious which one is this part. So left A, if I move it, something is off. Perspective. Oh yeah, this one was scaled up, and this one covers my other models. Okay, so that's how it goes. And maybe that should be scaled up again to cover more and more. And that was causing the trouble, so just select left C and moving in and scale it even up a little bit and moving. And now I'm going to perspective and check if that scale happened to be good or not. And scaling this one as well. So camera and drag my time slider. This is it. It's going well. Now there is a little bit of a bust. So now I see that's moving. Okay, it's not perfect, but everything else looks fine. Everything else looks fine to me, but here this little rocky surface in left C seems to be off. So what I need to do is drag this and make sure even if this drag is not okay, it's too much, so I have to move this back and scale it up even further, and then move it, and then check it if from 0 to 60, yeah, that works now. Okay, that works now. Okay, and we have the sense of depth in here. Okay, great. Now, we can add further smaller details, and I will get back to you. Okay. Okay, and here we are with all the layers. So this is a final render of the set. Let me close this and show what's going on, and a couple of tips to discuss. Okay, so Shift L, that hides the light, so that's one thing. If you don't want to see the camera all the time, Shift C is hiding away the camera. But regarding to camera, something that may be useful is if you have selected the camera, you can actually turn on this viewport display show cone and always. So that helps a lot to see the angles. Okay, and as you see, this is our front, and in the distance we have all the various layers. Now, not just these, something else is happening here. As you see, these layers are now somewhat shaped, so these 3D planes are not simply kind of rectangular planes. The way I did this is, let me select this one, Alt-Q isolate, and there is an edit poly modifier on top of it. So the way to do it is function key 4, this is the wire, and this is the actual mesh. So I will just right click and delete this edit poly and do it from the beginning just to show this. So in the modifier list, edit poly, and we are going in and on polygon level we will select polygons. So now if I'm dragging my selection, let me show this the selection tool. So if we hold it down, we have different options to select. So this is the rectangular selection. And of course it's great, but you know you're somewhat limited to your selection. There's the polygonal lasso, which one is also good, so we can go with that. Polygonal lasso, start dragging and tapping and try to select all things. So that's one way to select the polygons, and now we have a selection. We can press Ctrl I to invert selection, and we can hit delete. Now what you need to know, and from now on it's a lot less smaller, it is somewhat easier to handle it in 3D viewport. So we are in isolation mode. Let me leave isolation mode. So if you press function key 3, now the wireframes are much more telling about the size and position of the layer. Okay, so that's one thing that may be handy. So this is just an edit poly modifier and only used to remove polygons. If you turn off the visibility, you will actually get back the original. So if you want to make a copy of it and reuse it, it's absolutely doing well. Okay, now so these are the layers. This is the structure, and the rendered animation looks like this. So let me switch to where we are, more to the environment, and open it up, and just there you go. Let me resize it a little bit. Okay, and play. Alright, that's very nice. Here, this was a little bit ugly there, bad photoshopping, so I may need to go back and repair it, but that's how it goes. So this is about 61 frames. You know, we have a 0 frame and 60 is the last one, so that's 61 frames actually. A roughly 2-second movement. Alright, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Goodbye.